Welcome to our channel, Behind My Story. Please like, share, and subscribe.
Hi there. I am Matilda, and I'm 24 years old. My story starts just before Thanksgiving, when I decided to visit and spend a few days with my grandparents. Their house was in an old neighborhood, near a graveyard, that people only whispered about in small circles. But I wasn't interested in all the rumors. I like to visit graveyards, to enjoy their peaceful landscapes and time-honored history. I was always welcome at my grandparents' house. My granny prepared me the chocolate drink I like. Grandpa baked me the biscuits with his magic recipe. We spent all day talking, laughing, and playing. My father was an archaeologist. He was crazy about antiques, so he had a room like a small museum. He collected a lot of things that were rare in that room. We used to sit in this room, and my grandfather would tell me stories about every antique, except for one painting of an old woman. I used to ask him about it, but he never told me what it was. As I was sleeping in the room, which was next to our little museum, I heard whispering. I opened the door and looked around. It was coming from my father's museum. I searched around the room to find out the source of the voice. I couldn't believe it. The eyes and mouth in the old painting were moving, and I heard, "There's danger in the backyard." I ran, frightened, to my grandparents' room. My grandfather asked me what happened, and I told him. I thought he would mock me, but he brought his gun and went quickly to the backyard. He told me if he didn't return within 15 minutes, I should call the police. Suddenly, I heard shots. I thought that something bad happened to my grandfather, but he entered the house and told us that the thieves ran away. They still wouldn't tell me about the painting, but I don't think I needed an explanation anymore. Hi, my name is Sandra, and I'm 17 years old. People used to call me Evil Eyes, not because I had a strange face, but because of my eyes. I had a genetic mutation, so my eyes were different colors. One was light gray and the other was dark brown. This effect made me look like an evil witch, a point of morbid curiosity. Whenever I would enter a public area, people would follow me with their eyes. Whenever children would see me, they would begin crying in fear. I had very few friends because people mocked whoever hung around with a freak like me. Society's negative reaction to my condition forced me to wear a light gray colored contact lens over my dark brown eyes so that both eyes appeared light gray in color. One day, a poetry reading contest was held in my area. I should have considered this to be an excellent opportunity for me because I used to be a very good poetry reader. But I stopped due to the people making fun of my eyes. So when I learned about the contest, I wasn't as excited as I normally would have been. Nevertheless, my mom encouraged me to take part in the contest. As I considered my mom to be my best friend, I took her advice. The day of the contest arrived. It was being held in the National City Theater with a panel of judges. They were some of the highly regarded poets in the country. A huge audience had bought tickets to attend the event. The competition was fierce because there were many skilled poets in there, and they were very confident. As for myself, I was worried and nervous. I wore sunglasses to hide my mismatched eyes. This was part of my presentation, but no one knew that. I could hear some people whispering behind my back, wondering why the stupid girl was wearing sunglasses inside a building. I heard a good number of silly, stupid, hurtful whispered comments. In due course, my turn came, and I went up on stage and began my reading. The audience mumbled to each other as I read. The judges seemed to be pleased. The poem I was reading was about my genetic peculiarity. At a suitable point, I removed my sunglasses to reveal what my poem was about. My mismatched eye colors. I expected gasps of shock or laughter from the audience, but nothing happened. The audience continued listening quietly and respectfully. After I finished my reading, the audience applauded warmly. Mom was crying tears of joy and pride. I was pleasantly surprised by the audience response. I honestly had expected much worse. Well, I didn't win the contest. I wasn't the best poet by a long shot. But what I gained was much more: pride and confidence in knowing that I had faced my fear and gained acceptance from everyone there. Now I have a new nickname: Wonder Eyes.
Hi there, I'm Carl and I'm 19 years old. I live with my grandpa on his farm on the outskirts of the city. Grandpa is fond of nature and quietude, as these calm his soul and spirit. He loves cultivating flowers and is very skilled in this field. He reads numerous books on unusual species of flowers, including their planting and growing requirements. He can also extract perfume fragrances from flowers. At first, I didn't care about this hobby of his and viewed it as a waste of time. However, after talking with him many times at length and listening to his myriad descriptions of the beauty of nature and flowers, I became hooked on them myself. Now I am as passionate as he is about them, and I love to study and learn about exotic and rare flowers. One of Grandpa's friends happened to be a botanist. He could talk for hours about rare flowers, even imaginary ones depicted in science fiction movies. One evening after he had visited our home and left, we went into the kitchen to prepare dinner when suddenly there came a knock at our front door. I answered the door, but no one was there. Nothing save a small box with a card, which I dutifully carried to Grandpa. The card said simply, "A gift from a dear friend." So we opened the box to find some strange seeds that were unlike any that Grandpa had ever seen before. He read another part of the note. "This is a Yasni flower from the future. Get ready for a fantastical, unforgettable trip." We didn't really believe this silly message, but we decided, what the heck, let's plant them and see what happens. In just 3 days, the seeds had produced exotic-looking purple flowers. Grandpa plucked one to extract some perfume from it. It had a wonderfully fragrant smell. Suddenly, I felt enervated and listless. My vision blurred, I couldn't breathe, and I became dizzy and passed out. When I opened my eyes, I was in the middle of some unknown desert. There were unfamiliar-looking parked cars with people in unfamiliar-looking clothes. One of the strangers pointed at me in alarm and shouted, "Catch him!" I ran, but they surrounded me and caught me. They bound my hands and hung me from a horizontal tent frame. I heard a groan and looked to my left to see Grandpa, similarly bound and hanging from another tent frame. The strangers were speaking in a language I had never heard before. Their apparent leader came over to us and said, "See this desert? The entire world is like this. Because of you. You destroyed our world. Our future is dark and bleak now. Those Yasni flowers you planted ended up breeding out of control and destroyed the world. You need to pay for your foul deeds." Suddenly, I heard a gunshot. Someone had shot Grandpa in the chest. He was bleeding profusely and appeared to be unconscious or dead. I couldn't tell which. I screamed, and then the shooter came towards me with hatred blazing in his eyes. He stopped and placed his gun barrel to my forehead. I screamed, "No!" and closed my eyes tightly. After a pause and hearing no shot, I opened my eyes to find myself lying on the floor beside Grandpa, the plucked flower lying between us. I woke him up and told him about my dream and found that he had had the exact same dream. He called his botanist friend and described the seeds, the flower, and its fragrance to him. The botanist said the unknown flower sounded similar to one that grew high in the Swiss Alps. It was illegal to import because it was known to induce hallucinations and cause other unpredictable reactions in people. To this day, we have no idea who the dear friend was that sent us these unusual, hallucinogenic flowers. We figure it must have been someone's idea of a practical joke. Or were these Yasni flowers indeed sent to us from the future? Hi, I'm Kyle and I'm 24 years old. I've been a weightlifter for over 10 years. This sport runs in my blood. I used to follow the international players and imagine myself in their place. I had a fervent dream of becoming the world weightlifting champion. I've been working towards this goal ever since I was 13 years old. I've trained 5 hours a day for years with the ultimate goal of competing in the Olympic Games. I craved the fame and recognition that would grant me. One of my first early successes was winning a junior championship while representing my city. They called me the Tank due to my impressive strength. All the people around me foresaw a bright future for me. Title after title, contest after contest, my victories inevitably led me to the national championship. The winner of that championship would represent our country in the Olympics. I underwent intensive training to the exclusion of all else. I was so focused. My manager was confident that I could easily win the world championship, and I didn't want to disappoint him. The competition was fierce. I faced numerous fierce competitors, but I defeated them all and reached the final round. The only player left to challenge me was last year's champion, who had never lost a contest. The competition gradually got harder and harder until we reached the point where one of us had to break the world record to beat the other. A crucial tipping point came when I needed to lift a weight that was heavier than I had ever attempted before. There was danger in doing so, and my manager cautioned me to consider if it was worth the risk of serious injury to continue, but I was too driven to heed his warning. I had trained and waited too long for this moment. There's no turning back now, so I bent down and grasped the barbell. I sucked in a deep breath and lifted and heaved with all my might. As soon as I had lifted the weight above my head, I knew immediately that I had overestimated myself. After only a fraction of a second, I felt an excruciating pain in my backbone. A snap. I collapsed under the weight of the barbell and fell flat to the floor with the barbell across my chest pinning me down. The pain in my back was unbearable. I felt as if I were dying. I was taken to the hospital where a doctor diagnosed that I had broken my back at the 4th and 5th vertebrae and that I would never walk again. I tried to kill myself on several occasions, not wanting to live my remaining life in a wheelchair. All my friends, and even my coach, gradually began avoiding me, not wanting to be associated with a loser and a cripple. My mom was the only person who stood by my side and never gave up on me. She helped me with my rehabilitation. Initially, the simple act of lifting a teaspoon felt like I was trying to lift a mountain. After 6 months of intensive physical therapy, a miracle happened. I was able to stand erect for a few seconds. 3 months later, I was able to walk slowly. I began a light training program to get back to my dream. Everybody was shocked that I was determined and foolhardy enough to try to do it all again, but I intended to achieve my dream even if it killed me, which it might very likely do. 2 years later, the scene cuts to Kyle walking out onto the Olympics weightlifting stage to the cheering of thousands of people.
You know, sometimes the truth is even stranger than fiction, especially if you had a dark secret in your life that would put you in danger if it were exposed. Such was my case, and this is my story. My name is Charlotte, and I'm 17 years old. I live with my mom. My dad passed away before I was born, so my mom had to raise me all by herself. My mom knew everything about me. My school studies, my friends. She had certain rules that I was supposed to follow, like eating outdoors was forbidden, and I can't be friends with someone unless she knew everything about them first, and so on. I thought these rules were somewhat paranoid, and I asked her why she placed such restrictions on making friends. Her reply was simply that you can't trust anyone nowadays. But that wasn't a very satisfying answer. And when I asked her what it meant, she didn't say anything further. As I was growing up, these rules mystified me even more, and I couldn't help but wonder if they had anything to do with my father, whom I knew nothing about. Mom always said he was a troublemaker, and she told me that everything would be clear to me in time. One holiday, I joined a new band. We held a lot of concerts. It was the best. I was good at playing music and singing. When we went camping, we met some students from other countries. We made a lot of new friends and had fun together. We even had a chance to increase our band's fame and reputation. After our first performance at camp, an Asian girl approached me. She hugged me, saying, "Charlotte, I missed you a lot." Taken aback, I asked, "Do I know you?" She surprised me again by saying, "Don't you recognize me? I'm Mary, your friend." I smiled and replied, "You must be mistaken. I don't know you." After insisting that she was indeed my friend, she excused herself and ran back to join her friends. Weird. Though, now that I think about it, I have often had an eerie feeling that someone was watching me wherever I went. I tried to shake off this feeling many occasions, but I never could. I would just tell myself that it must be my imagination. That night, we all went into the jungle. It was a jungle tour. It was very dark, and I got separated from the group and found myself alone, surrounded by trees. I called out to my friends, but no one heard me. Suddenly, I bumped into someone, a girl it seemed, and I apologized. When I turned around to look at her, I was shocked to see, well, myself, or my double. It was as if I was looking in a mirror. "Who are you?" I asked. "I'm Charlotte," she replied simply. "That's impossible. I'm Charlotte," I said assertively. "Are you with us here at the campsite?" "Yes," she said. I asked her which way back to the campsite. She pointed in one direction and we headed back. As we were walking, her phone rang. It was her father. He was worried about her and was just making sure she was okay. We arrived at our tents without incidents, and I said, It was really nice to meet you, Charlotte. I'll see you tomorrow. I felt a strong connection to the girl for some reason. Then I realized that I had forgotten my bag, and I went to get it. And again, I had that ominous feeling that I'm being watched. Suddenly, something hit me on the head. When I woke up, I found myself sitting in a car, surrounded by people wearing sunglasses, and I was really frightened. Who are you people? I demanded to know. And what do you want from me? One man told me that my dad was the reason they kidnapped me. When I told him that my dad had died a long time ago, he just laughed. Then he sprayed something on my face and I lost consciousness. When I woke up later, the other Charlotte was tied up beside me. One of the men seemed confused, seeing two of me, and he asked his boss which of us was the girl they were looking for. Suddenly, I heard someone shout, "Freeze! Don't move!" The police had come. They came out from the tree line. Surrounding the car, they arrested the men. Then they untied us both. Someone appeared looking very worried. The other Charlotte started coming too, and asked where she was and what was going on. Then she saw her dad, and she ran to him. Her dad then looked at me and asked for my name and my mother's name. When I told him, he said he knew who I was, and said to send his regards to my mom, and to tell her that he was still keeping her secret. Then he gave me a medal and hugged me, saying that he wasn't sure if we would ever meet again. I was still staring at him, looking confused, so he smiled and he asked me where my father was, and I told him that my father was dead. And then he said that that was their agreement. He and my mom, that he was only trying to protect me and the other Charlotte, who happened to be my twin sister. He said he got into some trouble in his line of work. Some people threatened to kill us, so he and my mom decided to split us up. She took you, and I took your twin sister, he said. We did this to keep you safe. I named your twin Charlotte, just the same as you. I was still feeling a bit overwhelmed at this point. This was preposterous. I couldn't believe it. Suddenly, I heard someone calling me. "Charlotte, wake up! It's time for a trip. You must have been having a nightmare because you were screaming." I woke up to find myself in the tent with my friend. When I went outside the tent, I stopped. Right in front of me, staring me in the eyes, was a girl who was my mirror image.